They called it the agoge, the Spartan way of turning boys into warriors. But what they never told you is that some of those boys never came back. For centuries, history has painted Sparta as the land of discipline, strength, and courage, a place where every child was molded for war. But hidden beneath the marble of its glory was a ritual so dark and secret, even Spartan elders swore never to speak of it. A ritual whispered only by one name, the Wolf Trials. And it began when a boy turned 12. Every Spartan child entered the agoge, the brutal education system that forged warriors for the state. They learned to endure pain, to steal without being caught, to kill without hesitation. They were taught that fear was a disease, and the only cure was obedience. But according to fragments found in Plutarch's Lost Notes and a later Roman commentary by Claudius Aelianus, there was another level of training, one that was never recorded in public law. It was reserved for the strongest, most silent, and most merciless among them. Those chosen disappeared into the wild for several nights, and when they returned, they were no longer boys. They were wolves. It happened without warning. A Spartan instructor, known as a paidonomos, would enter the sleeping barracks at midnight. He would light a single oil lamp and call out one name. No one spoke. No one moved. The chosen boy would rise, wrap a thin cloak over his shoulders, and follow the paidonomos into the dark. He was told nothing, not where he was going, not why he was chosen, and not what awaited him beyond the city walls. Some said it was an honor. Others whispered it was a test of death, and the rest just prayed it would never be their turn. The boy was taken beyond the Eurotas River, into the barren hills surrounding Sparta. There, deep within the pine forests, stood the ruins of an ancient temple, dedicated not to Ares, the god of war, but to Lycaean Zeus, the wolf aspect of Zeus, worshipped long before Sparta was built. This was the beginning of the wolf trials. The paidonomos gave no weapons, only a dagger of bronze and a piece of dried meat. He would whisper, "If you return, you're no longer a boy. If you don't, the wolves have judged you." Then he vanished, leaving the boy alone in the wilderness, surrounded by the sounds of night, hunger gnawing at his stomach, and the knowledge that he was being watched. For 7 nights, the boy was hunted, not by beasts, but by other boys who had survived the trial before him. They were the Cryptia, Sparta's secret enforcers, chosen from the strongest graduates of the agoge. They wore black cloaks, carried silent knives, and moved through the darkness like shadows. Their purpose was simple: find a new initiate, test him, break him. If he survived, he would join them. If not, his body would be left in the forest, offered to the wolves as tribute. It was said that the first time a boy killed another in silence, he became a true Spartan. But if he hesitated, if he showed mercy, the wolves came for him that night. The few who returned were changed forever. They no longer flinched at pain, nor wept for comrades. They moved differently, slower, quieter, more deliberate. They had become predators, molded not by law or order, but by survival itself. When questioned by the elders, they were made to swear an oath. "I have seen the face of fear. I have become its shadow." Only then were they permitted to serve in the Cryptia, the most feared and least understood branch of the Spartan system. Even within Sparta, their existence was denied, their missions never recorded. One ancient account, believed to come from Diodorus Siculus, tells of a boy named Lycon, the youngest ever chosen. He was sent into the hills during a storm, his cloak soaked, his dagger rusted. 3 nights passed before he returned, covered in blood, carrying the severed paw of a wolf. When the paidonomos asked what happened, he answered, "The wolf came for me. I became him." From that day forward, the name Lycon, meaning wolf-born, became a title whispered among the elite warriors of Sparta. These were men who could move without sound, kill without emotion, and vanish without trace. They were the shadow within the phalanx, the blade in the dark that made Sparta more than an army, a living weapon. But no matter how strong, how disciplined, or how divine the Spartans believed themselves to be, there was one secret the wolf trials never revealed, a truth so disturbing that it shook even the elders who created it. Because deep in those forests, not all the wolves were human. When dawn broke over the forests of Taygetus, the Spartan city stirred to the sound of horns, a new day of drills, discipline, and duty. But in the hills beyond the city walls, the wolf trials continued. There, among the shadows and howling winds, the chosen boys fought not just to survive, but to remain human. Every year, 2 or 3 boys were chosen, and every year, at least one never returned. Officially, they were said to have failed the Agoge. Unofficially, their names were erased, burned from the records as if they had never existed. But whispers spread among the mothers of Sparta. They said the missing children's spirits howled in the hills at night, calling out for vengeance. Priests of Lycaean Zeus forbade anyone from entering the forest after sunset, claiming that the souls of the fallen boys had become wild guardians of the trials. Still, the Agoge continued, because to Sparta, the survival of the city mattered more than the lives of its sons. The Cryptia, those who had survived the wolf trials, became something between men and ghosts. Their duty was to maintain control over the Helots, the enslaved population of Sparta who worked the fields. But their real mission was older, darker. Each autumn, before the harvest, the Ephors, Sparta's high judges, declared a ritual war against the Helots. During this time, the Cryptia could kill any Helot without punishment. They moved at night, knives glinting under the moonlight, killing those who rebelled, and those who might someday rebel. It was a massacre disguised as discipline, and it began as part of the wolf trials. For the same boys who learned to stalk, to hunt, and to kill in the wild were now unleashed upon their own people. No longer children, no longer human. They were the embodiment of the wolf's creed. Kill what threatens the pack, even if it bleeds the same blood. Most Spartans never knew where this ritual came from, but a lost fragment of Plato's student Clearchus hints at a terrifying truth. It claimed that long before Sparta rose, the priests of Lycaean Zeus practiced rites of transformation, ceremonies in which young men lived as beasts to awaken the god within. According to the legend, the chosen would eat the flesh of a wolf, then run wild for 9 years. If they refrained from tasting human blood, they could return to society. If not, they remained cursed, forever lost to the wilderness. Centuries later, Sparta reimagined that myth as the wolf trials, stripping away the rituals, keeping only the purpose, to purge fear, to feed obedience, and to create warriors whose souls belonged not to themselves, but to the state of Sparta. But something strange happened in the 3rd generation of warriors trained under this hidden system. Records describe a growing number of Cryptia who began to show changes. They claimed they could see in the dark, move without sound, and sense danger long before it came. Some said their eyes reflected moonlight like a predator's. Others whispered that the ritual had gone too far, that the boys were no longer returning as men, but as something in between. A Roman visitor, centuries later, recorded an encounter with a Spartan elder who told him, "We taught our sons to become wolves. We forgot what happens when wolves learn they no longer need masters." Around 380 BCE, Sparta faced a quiet crisis. A group of Cryptia, those who had survived the wolf trials, began turning against the Ephors. They had lived too long in darkness, too long in silence, and now they claimed they could hear the gods directly. They no longer obeyed orders. They no longer distinguished between Helots and Spartans. Their leader, known only as Agetor, declared, "We are the sons of Lycaon. The blood of man no longer binds us." The rebellion was swift and brutal. For weeks, the forest burned. Spartan soldiers were forced to fight their own brothers, shadows moving through smoke, killing without sound or mercy. When it ended, the Ephors ordered the complete erasure of all records related to the wolf trials. Every reference, every scroll, every name destroyed. And from that day forward, the Agoge remained, but its darkest chapter was buried beneath centuries of silence. Yet one story escaped. A Roman traveler named Lucius Varro wrote of an encounter in the mountains near Taygetus around 100 BCE. He described meeting an old man with eyes like a wolf's, pale and glinting in the moonlight. The man spoke in broken Greek, saying only, "I was 12 when they sent me into the woods. The others died. I never came back." When Varro turned to ask his name, the old man was gone, leaving only paw prints in the dust. But perhaps the most chilling part of all was this. Every few years, shepherds near Taygetus still reported seeing fires deep in the forest, circles of light that flickered in patterns, as though people still performed ancient rites. And sometimes at night, the villagers heard howls. Not from animals, but from men, because what Sparta created may have never truly died. The forests around Mount Taygetus lay silent under a silver moon. But deep inside those woods, beneath centuries of ash and memory, something ancient stirred. A secret buried by kings, priests, and scholars alike. The final truth of the wolf trials. In 1904, a British archaeologist named Dr. Elias Wentworth excavated the ruins of an old Spartan shrine near Amyclae, not far from the legendary forests. Among the broken columns and burnt offering pits, his team unearthed a sealed bronze jar, blackened by age and soot. Inside were fragments of papyrus, half-rotted, half-burned, written in Doric Greek. It was signed by someone calling himself Damon of Lacedaemon, once a tutor of Spartan youths. The scroll began with a chilling confession. "I trained boys to be beasts. I taught them to kill without reason. We told them they were serving Sparta. But in truth, we were serving something older, something that wears the face of a wolf." Wentworth's team quickly realized this was no ordinary text. It described rituals that had never appeared in any known record, secret oaths, blood markings, and ceremonies of transformation under the full moon of Lycaean Zeus. According to Damon's account, the final test of the wolf trials took place once every 7 years, when the moon was full and blood red. The remaining initiates, usually no more than 5, were led blindfolded to an underground chamber known as the Den of the Silent Ones. There, a priest would draw a spiral of ash on the ground, representing the path from man to beast. The boys were made to crawl through it on their knees, chanting an ancient verse. What is man without fear? What is a god without hunger? At the center of the spiral lay a bowl of blood and a single piece of raw meat. Whoever ate it would rise. Whoever refused would die where he knelt. Damon's words trembled near the end. They say the blood was of a wolf. But I know what I saw. It was not wolf's blood. Wentworth's findings drew attention from across Europe. At first, scholars dismissed the scroll as a hoax, until they matched its dialect and handwriting to inscriptions found in other Spartan ruins. Then came the most shocking discovery of all. The god Damon referred to was not Lycaean Zeus, as once thought. It was an older deity erased from Hellenic worship long before classical Greece. Apollo Lycaeos, Apollo of the wolves. Ancient fragments describe this Apollo not as the god of light and reason, but as the god who walked between man and beast, teaching chosen warriors the balance of blood and mind. A protector of the strong, but also a devourer of the weak. If true, then the wolf trials were not merely Spartan military conditioning. They were the continuation of a forgotten cult, older than Sparta itself. 2 weeks after his discovery, Dr. Wentworth vanished. His notes were found scattered in his tent. His team reported hearing howls echoing through the valley that night, though no wolves had lived in the region for centuries. When Greek authorities searched his camp, the bronze jar and the papyrus fragments were gone. Only one page remained, half-burned, containing a final translation from Damon's text. He who devours fear becomes wolf. He who devours blood becomes God. Wentworth's disappearance was never solved. His assistant, Thomas Lyle, later wrote in his diary that he had seen footprints near the tent, not of men, not of wolves, but both. Over the decades, rumors persisted. In 1938, German archaeologists working in the same region reported finding unusual stone symbols, matching the Spartan spiral daemon described. The site was quietly sealed by the occupying forces during World War II, and no record of it remains. Local villagers still avoid the area. They say that sometimes when the moon turns red, figures can be seen running through the forest, moving faster than any human should. No one follows. No one looks twice. For centuries, the story of the Spartans has been one of discipline, courage, and martial perfection. But what if that perfection came from a darkness deeper than history admits? What if the agoge, the pride of Sparta, was only the surface, and the wolf trials were the hidden foundation of their legend? Perhaps the true strength of Sparta was never its soldiers, but the fear they carried within. The knowledge that they had once walked through death and returned as something else. A people who looked at the world and said, "We have killed the beast within." Or perhaps, "We have learned to live with it." The winds of Taygetus still whisper that truth, carrying echoes of the past through the mountains. Maybe they are only stories. Or maybe, somewhere in the shadows of Greece, a secret survives, passed down through those who remember what it means to be both man and wolf. And if you ever find yourself alone beneath a red moon near the old forests of Sparta, listen carefully. You might hear footsteps behind you. Or worse, breathing that sounds too calm, too controlled to belong to any beast.